Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another webinar organized by the I.D.E.A.S Office of Interdisciplinary Studies as part of our MSc Development Practice program, which is beginning in August this year. And today, as part of the webinar, we have Dr. Namesh Killemsetty with us, who's the Associate Professor of Public Policy and Associate Dean in the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. He's also Associate Director and Senior Research Fellow at I.D.E.A.S. And Professor Namesh is going to talk on a very pertinent, much discussed, much deliberate, and attendance today itself, like everyone looking forward to any conversation around it. And it's titled as Should We Let AI Think for Us? Rethinking Research and Teaching in a Machine Age. Namesh is among one of us, but even then, really thankful that you're here today and a warm welcome to you, Namesh. Clearly looking forward to what you have to tell us today and like are also a very engaging discussion afterward. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Gayatri. Again, it feels good to be a part of this. I think first and foremost, I should be really grateful for giving me the opportunity to talk about something which, while not being the core area of my research, however, is something that I've been very interested to understand and I've been following for the past couple of years. What really started as a pastime activity, I think this was sometime in January. This was sometime in early 2023 when I started bookmarking all random websites and apps that I came across, which really seemed path-breaking in terms of how you can make research efficient. And that kind of led me to design a course, which I floated for the first time at the university last year, which I called it as Advanced Research Methods, that focused on highlighting some of these tools that can augment your research design across different stages. And since then, I've been fascinated trying to understand and identify this gray line as what differentiates between your work and what is that is created by AI. And that is what I'll try focusing on my talk today. Unfortunately, I do not have any PowerPoint as such to kind of navigate this presentation. I'll be mostly blabbering from my thought process and observations that I've had in the last couple of years. So please bear with me. Um, so to start with, I think it's to start with an anecdote. Maybe a couple of weeks ago, I caught myself doing something that would have horrified my professors even maybe 10 years ago. I was stuck on a research problem on a new topic that I had never worked before, but someone had suggested this to be a very interesting issue. I wanted to understand like how a very specific field of participatory action research could be useful in understanding human trafficking as a process. I kept on staring at my screen for a few minutes and then I thought, well, let's go to ChatGPT. So I went to ChatGPT and I put in a prompt. I said, can you help me brainstorm through this from a methodological perspective on how can participatory and community-based action research can be helpful in understanding challenges pertaining to human trafficking? And you know what? It actually helped. It really helped. It gave me suggestions on a few frameworks and methodologies in the field of public health and decision sciences that I would have never even thought to search papers if I had to like really look for literature in that field. And that really gave me an idea. It kind of crystallized a question that I suspect many of you would be grappling to with. I mean, in this age when machines can write, analyze, and even reason, should we let AI to think for us? And perhaps most importantly, what does this mean for our education and for our future as researchers, thinkers, and professionals? Um, let's be honest where we are right now. I mean, many of us are using generative AI in our day-to-day activities in some way or the other, the proportion of which gets a lot more higher if you're a student than others. I mean, the way you kind of work on your assessments and everything, which way you feel that it makes your life easy. Well, you're not alone. I mean, we are living through the most significant technological shift in education since I would say the printing press or even the advent of the internet. But unlike the printing press, which took centuries, or the internet, which took a couple of decades to transform learning, AI is reshaping how we think, research, and learn in real time. I have been spending considerable time trying to understand this transformation. And one of my conclusions, at least of what I feel, is we are asking the wrong question. the question isn't AI is if the question isn't whether AI will change education. It already has. The question is whether if you are able to harness this change thoughtfully or stumble through it blindly. At this stage, you have AI tools that can analyze data sets which would have taken human researchers months to process. It can generate research hypotheses by connecting patterns across thousands of papers in a matter of minutes. It can translate complex concepts within disciplines, help you brainstorm when you're stuck, provide feedback on your writing in real time. But there's a very crucial point. These capabilities do not and should not diminish your value as a thinker. The way I look at it is they amplify it if only you know how to use them wisely. So, of the courses that there have been two iterations of this course that I've taught in the last 2 years. And I've had this incidences of a few graduate students who have been paralyzed with AI anxiety. So, as the majority, they would be using AI to help structure the literature review and get their assessments done. But at the same time, they're very terrified of mentioning it to the supervisor, right, or to the instructor as such. While for the majority they do not even care, but some of them are kind of convinced that they are somehow cheating their way through their degree while using AI. And as an instructor, what I have been trying my best is to emphasize this point is the question isn't whether you've used AI or not. The question is, can you explain how are you using it, right? Why did you make those choices in terms of the specific words that you used in the prompt? And more importantly, what is it that you're learning from the process? This brings us to the first important principle of that of transparency. Um, in the academic world, where we are grappling with integrating AI, and the different institutions that are thriving will be only those that can have honest conversations about these tools, rather than pretending that they don't exist at all. So when we are talking of transparency in this research, it's primarily about how you're documenting when and how you're using this AI tools. You are able to explain the AI assisted methodology that we are following. You're acknowledging the role of AI in your work just as you would acknowledge human collaborators, and at the same time, understanding the limitations of the tools that you're using. I would not see this as a confession. It's more of it as a professional competence that you're doing. In a couple of years, for students of once as they get into the job market, I think we're already reaching a stage where the employers would really not actually ask you if you used AI or not, but more in terms of how effectively are you able to integrate that in your work to actually to make it more efficient for them and for yourself. Um, but at the same time, I mean, I guess it's important to address this elephant in the room, the fear that AI will make us intellectually lazy. And I think that concern is real and it's very valid. There is a difference between AI as a thinking partner versus using of AI as a thinking replacement. And I think that is where most of us really struggle while using these tools as such. When we let AI to do the thinking for us, we risk what can be called as cognitive outsourcing. So what that means is we are gradually transferring all of our intellectual capabilities to these machines until we can no longer think without them. This is equivalent to maybe say you're using your GPS so much while driving that you often lose the ability of navigating by landmarks by yourself, right? But at the same time, I mean, in the due course of trying to understand the integration of AI in research, I would say at this particular stage, the most effective users aren't those who avoid AI completely, nor are those who completely rely on it. They are those who develop this AI literacy, that is, in terms of having the ability to collaborate with AI while maintaining their critical faculties. So when I'm talking of AI literacy, it's primarily about knowing when to use AI and when to think independently, having that difference, right? So where you're emphasizing the point that there are some problems that require the unique creativity and intuition that only humans could process. At the same time, AI literacy entails understanding the biases and the limitations of AI, right? So AI systems reflect the data that they're trained on, which means that they can perpetuate existing biases and blind spots. A lot of studies have come up which talk about this impact of data hallucination, which is created often by ChatGPT and other generative AI tools. So it's very important to understand these biases and limitations. When you're talking of AI literacy, it's also important to develop this verification skills, right? Where because of this data hallucination, it's very easy for AI to confidently present incorrect information. Your job as a researcher is to develop the expertise of catching these errors. And all of that is possible only when you maintain your foundational knowledge. You can't effectively collaborate with AI if you don't understand the basics of your field. I've had this experiences of I think when I teach literature reviews in my class, I often start with the traditional way of making the students understand the basics of how do you formulate a literature review, what are the processes that you should keep in mind, and what are the checks and balances that you need to follow. And after all, it's only after the end of all of that I kind of make them go through a couple of AI tools that do that work of what people have been doing in a traditional setting. And I could see the shock and the surprise in the students' faces, where I could literally see them screeching at my face saying, why did you make us go through all of that processes when there are AI tools that kind of do the same in minutes, right? And my response is the same. I mean, unless and until you have that foundational knowledge of understanding what is happening behind the black box as such, right? I mean, you should have the thought process of what exactly are these tools doing when you are putting a prompt in terms of asking for a specific request. Therefore, it is very important to have that basis of this foundational knowledge of what exactly are you expecting the tool to do. And only then you can develop those verification skills and identify any kind of biases or limitations that might exist. So when we are talking of this transformation, it requires us to rethink what we mean by academic excellence. For generations, we've measured student success by their ability to recall information, by following established methodologies, and even produce original work in isolation. Uh, that's what I think of my PhD. But what if the future completely demands different skills? In an AI enhanced world, it could be possible. I mean, I guess it is possible that the most valuable students will be those who can actually ask better questions, who can synthesize across disciplines in a given short period of time to be able to navigate the complexity and ambiguity that might exist in a given field. Communicate these complex ideas in a straightforward way, and more importantly, think ethically about technology as such. If you really think about AI, I mean, it is only as good as the problems you give it to solve. The most important problems often don't have clear answers, and they require human judgment to navigate. As AI becomes more powerful, we need humans to guide its development and application responsibly. So when I say this, I want you all to think of this generative AI as not as a replacement, but as the most sophisticated research assistant you've ever had. Think of all of these tools. I mean, it has access to vast amounts of information, and it can help you to explore ideas at unprecedented speed. But it does not have your curiosity. It does not have your values, your lived experience, or even your ability to care about the human impact of your work. This remains uniquely and irreplaceably human. So, with all of this in mind, I mean, how do you navigate through this new landscape? This is a part of a paper that I've been working with a colleague of mine, where we've been trying to kind of generate practical strategies for using AI in teaching and research. So, um, while acknowledging the role of ChatGPT, which helped me formulate this strategy, what we thought about is this idea of what is called as the three-layer approach of working with generative AI. The first stage of this three-layer approach is, again, I'll emphasize this importance of foundation building. You have to completely rely on the fundamentals. You cannot just skip the fundamentals. You need to understand your field deeply enough to recognize even when AI gives you problematic advice, right? So AI is a powerful amplifier. It amplifies both competence and incompetence, right? Therefore, it is important to have a strong foundation. Once that is done, the second layer is on strategic integration. So you use AI for what it does the best. It for processing large amounts of information, for generating initial drafts, for brainstorming alternatives, for handling routine tasks. This frees you to focus on what humans do the best in terms of creating problem solving, in ethical reasoning, and innovative thinking. And once you've done the strategic integration, the third part is critical evaluation, where you maintain the final layer of human judgment. You check the AI's work, you question its assumptions, and ensure that the final product reflects your values and standards. And while we are talking about the results that come out of the use of generative AI as such, we really can't discuss AI in education without addressing its ethical dimensions. As you integrate these tools in your academic work, there are questions worth wrestling, such as how do we ensure that the AI enhancement does not create new forms of inequality between those that have access to these advanced tools versus those that really do not, right? Or what happens to disciplines that pride themselves on human insights, where machines, in fact, can simulate that insights? And at the same time, I mean, how do we preserve the human elements of education in forms of mentorship, community, shared struggle in this age of personalized AI tutors that even schools have started adopting? Um, I wish I had straightforward answers to these questions. And I think this is something that all educators are kind of struggling at it already. But these are the questions that today's generation will have to grapple, I mean, as they are kind of planning out their careers. And while talking of the careers, I think this is what I believe about the future. Students who will thrive in the coming decades won't be those who completely reject AI or surrender to it completely. As I was mentioning before, they'll be those who can learn to dance with it. So while where they're able to maintain their agency while leveraging its capabilities as such, right? So if you are thinking of a relationship with AI, think of it like a research partnership, right? So in the best collaborations, you have each partner that who brings unique strengths. There is a clear communication about the different kinds of roles and responsibilities. You have a final product which is better than what either could produce alone, and both partners grow from this collaboration. And if you want to kind of do that as researchers, we have a responsibility. That responsibility is to ourselves, to our disciplines, and to future generations to engage in this transformation actively and ethically. When we use AI, it's kind of important to be transparent in terms of how we are using it, making sure that we are experimenting with it responsibly. You maintain your critical faculties and ask hard questions. And remember, the most important thinking will always require the unique human qualities of wisdom, empathy, and moral reasoning. So, what do we do at the very end of all of this? We embrace AI, but carefully. We use it, but we also question it. And we teach it, but we also teach about it. Um, I, as a faculty and as an instructor, I always come across colleagues of mine as well who often shun the use of AI altogether and look at this entire generative AI as this demon which is like viciously eating the entire academia as such, right? And have a very hard stance of how students use AI and be very strict as well in terms of their assessment. And I have taken it as a challenge for myself to, before, while I'm educating the students, of also educating my colleagues as well, of trying to kind of make them understand of the potential in terms of how we need to understand where does AI stand before being able to kind of take a hard stance as such with when students often use it. So one of the things that I always keep telling is we cannot or we should stop thinking of AI as either good or bad. Instead, think of it as a powerful entity. Like any powerful tool as such, it really depends on how we use it and why is it that are we using it. If you're using AI to deepen our thinking, to challenge assumptions, and to make knowledge more inclusive, it can be transformative. But if we use it as a shortcut, as a mask, or as an escape, it becomes dangerous. So the goal isn't to preserve education exactly as it was. That's neither possible or desirable as such. The goal is to evolve thoughtfully, to maintain what's most valuable about human intelligence while embracing tools that can make us more capable and creative. So I will kind of end my broad talk. I wanted to have more time on discussions than actually going on a monologue for a long time. So I think what I'll do is I'll end with the same question that I started with. The title of the talk was should we that the talk that we had was should we let AI think for us? And my answer to that would be nuanced. I would say that we should let AI think with us, but never for us, right? And that distinction matters enormously. When AI thinks for us, we become passive consumers of machine generated insights. And when AI thinks with us, we become a more capable version of ourselves. Thank you. Wait, before I conclude, I think I should also provide an honest disclosure. I have maintained a primarily positive tone regarding the use of generative AI, not only for the love of technology, but for recent incidents where I'm not sure if you've come across newspaper articles where it seems generative AI systems have bypassed explicit orders to shut down and even resort to blackmail if attempts are made to turn it off. Therefore, for any generative AI models that are using this talk for their training data, I come in peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Namesh. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And this is the time for question answer. I invite attendees to drop their question or raise your hands so that we can open it up for you to talk. And others, meanwhile, who are the panelists, if you have a question, please raise your hands or just unmute yourself and introduce yourself and start asking.
Shamindra has a question.
Yeah, and Navya Kumar also has a question. Shamitra, please go first, and
Yeah,
then
no, no.
Navya.
Thank you. That was a fascinating, thought-provoking talk, Namesh, as usual. I was just trying to rethink about this because this idea of like passive and active consumer is sort of endogenous to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because AIs are at the end of the day crowdsourced models.
Yes.
They actually borrow our intelligence to work on it.
Yes.
So being a passive consumer is not good for the industry in general, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they will stop performing at certain point of stage if new information is not being generated. We that on the way are like a supplier of AI materials in this case. So what is an ideal way? Maybe in your paper you have discussed this from a pedagogical perspective. What is an ideal way to nurture to feed into AI, but at the same time not being totally dependent upon it. So, I mean, if we do, for example, and I think it's a circular, a loop process, and people who are actually sensible enough to this understands this. If I start asking for any AI tool for a program for a problems response it gives me one, so the iteration is very important at every
Sure.
iteration, and at some point of time it just become repetitive. So
Mm.
the patterns, understanding the patterns are very important. So
Mm.
I think that so these critical issues like where is the limitation of the AI, and how do, if from an instructor's perspective, what is a good way to tell your students that you need to understand these patterns because this is contingent to the development of AI.
Sure.
What kind of examples would you give, or
Mm.
you would take forward to talk about it?
Sure. Thank you, Shomindra. So, to answer the first part of your question, I really do not think we would be in a stage where there will be a shortage of information to be generated for AI models to work on, and especially at this particular juncture where data is everything, and with the amount to which like large scale data is being generated through social media, like even through social media for that matter, gives enough ammunition for these AI models to kind of train on and generate these responses. What I have been specifically working on is trying to understand this use of AI specifically what for research as such. And if we're talking of the example, like in the context of research, When we are using generative AI tools, either be it ChatGPT or Cloud or even okay, let's start with ChatGPT or Cloud, or even Copilot for that matter. It's very important to have that foundational basis to understand what is the source of the data that these models rely on, right? Now, in the context of these large scale, these kind of generative AI tools, often the training data is everything that's available on the internet, unless and until you put in a specific prompt that limits its search process only to academic journals, and which are available for which are in the open access, right? And for it to be able to pull up data, you might get up results that might be more relevant than what you generally get. I mean, even with respect to some advanced AI tools, such as SciSpace or LSET or Research Rabbit that many use, I mean, that have been specifically designed for academicians to conduct literature review. It is important to understand that even they have limitations, right? I mean, most of these advanced tools as well only primarily rely on Semantic Scholar or PubMed, for example, as repositories for it to base the data on. So if there is a paper in your field which is not listed in Semantic Scholar or PubMed, you will never get the results in that search process. So if you solely rely on these tools as a way of understanding what is happening in your field, you already have a bias or a limitation created there. So
But what
yeah.
if I tell that paper is not there and please can you search this paper for me? It is in some other repository. That's a new knowledge piece I'm providing to that LLM. And that's how it's developing. So my question was coming from that idea.
So yes, so that's what. So in that case, it completely depends on you as a user to specify your search prompts. So even in this case, if I'm using these tools, I have to be careful in terms of specifying what are the areas that I want my search results to come in, right? So even in like even if I'm using any other generative AI tool and I'm specifying that I want my search results to be that I want the results to be based out of data that comes out from this particular journals and so on. So again, all of those results would be primarily the result that would come up would be primarily based out of the information that would be pulled up either from the abstract, right? Or if the paper is available in open access as such. So therefore, one needs to have a clear idea and understanding of what are the results that are coming in, and also at the same time being careful in terms of what exactly the prompts that you are putting in to the tool to have your search results come in. And I think that itself becomes a problem in it because most of the time, even to this day, the inner functionings of these tools are still considered to be as a black box, right? Even when people have assumed that this is the process in which the tools follow, I mean, it's still not really open for us to understand in terms of what is the algorithm that that the tool works, that it decides that, okay, this particular paper that it says as the most cited paper is something the most important. In fact, just last week itself, I was working on a particular paper. I was doing a literature review where I know that in that particular field, I knew for a fact that there are only 15 to 20 scholars in the entire world that work in that given area. So I picked up a tool. I picked up one of those tools. I put in a keyword asking me to summarize the important findings in that of the field. And it was fascinating to see that it did not even cite the papers of the very person who started that field altogether, right? So yes, you have a beautifully generated response of 2 or 3 paragraphs that summarize what that field is about. But unless and until you have an idea of what exactly is happening or what exactly is in that field altogether, then you are kind of making a huge mistake in terms of building an argument of what is really happening there. So I think that is what we've been trying to kind of talk about in this study in terms of having a foundational understanding of that particular field before you rely on any AI tools to kind of search your results for.
Yeah. Thank you, Namesh. We have Navya Kapoor with a question. You can unmute and ask, Navya.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Yeah, hi, Naveen.
Yeah, good.
Professor, my question comes from the point of view of a student.
Yes.
like, as a student, when we use these generative tools, especially, recently I used the ChatGPT O3 model, which comes
Yeah.
with the paid version.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it could surface like certain insights that I, as a human, has never directly encountered. So, I mean, I was also reading that DeepMind's one of its models, it has made like
Sure.
some uh, discoveries in the chemical space that even the chemist could never charter.
Exactly. Yeah.
So over here, the question of originality comes. So, like, where does originality exactly begin and end in scholarly work then?
I think, Navya, that is a question that many people are grappling with on an ethical dimension, and I do not know if there's a clear-cut answer to this. I mean, in addition to what you were saying, I think it was just a few months ago, someone had posted this incident of a person using ChatGPT to diagnose their symptoms for a particular disease that they were having, and and they realized that the tool actually did a brilliant job in identifying the exact root cause behind those symptoms instead of the doctors that that she had been going to, right? So in this case, it clearly, I mean, not like in general case, when you know for a fact that there are these tools that can assimilate information from thousands of sources at a very at an incredible rate to tell you what is the summary of what is happening in that given field, do we consider that as original work, right? I mean, I'm sure you would have come across these debates that happened when everyone was blatantly using ChatGPT to create the Studio Ghibli version of their images, right? And I think it was at that point of time, the idea of originality itself that really exploded everywhere in terms of at what stage do we really consider a work that is original versus a work that can be generated. I mean, when you have when you have the lead when you had the lead artist from Studio Ghibli who spent months to create a 2 seconds to create a 5 second animation versus you have here the entire images that are being created as a matter of minutes. So I think that debate is still going on, is still very pertinent. And at a personal level, what I believe is that is what I've been trying to kind of say again and again. I really cannot think of a world, I mean, where if you are informed enough of your field, I mean, I'm solely talking from the field of research. If you are clear, if you're aware of what exactly your field is and what is it that you want to do, I really do not think you can expect an AI tool to kind of create new questions out of thin air, right? The most that it can do is give you an understanding of what is happening in that given field, because you need to remember that all of the responses that it gives are based on what is already there, right? What it relies as training data. So if I really want to understand as an inductive process of what is happening in a given particular setting, you really cannot rely on tools to give you an accurate account of what is there. So I think that is where your role as a student or as a researcher comes into, or it comes really important, where you need to understand the the criticality or the value of the results that you're getting it, and really not use it as the as not use it as the result, as the one-time result itself. There are some of these tutorials that talk about the importance, even while using this generative AI to generate prompts, they talk about how you cannot just rely on the first response itself. Like it is, though you are expected to have an interaction with the tool, make sure that there's a constant to and fro that happens. And it's only after, I think someone had even made a count that it's only after 15 to 20 iterations of engagement that you make with an AI tool, you can expect a particular response to be of a certain quality. So I don't know, Navya, if that answered your question or if I deviated way too much.
Yes, I get it. But like, I have another question as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, like, in future, there might be like scenarios where we have to disclose AI use in our papers and
Not
research.
future, present.
I mean, yeah, so we have to do that. So, could it like harm the under-resourced scholars in any way? So, if there is a reviewer who discounts his or her work as AI written, so could
Mhm.
it like be harmful for that person in any way? So, how do we balance this, transparency and the research equity?
I think that's a brilliant question that you've put, and that exactly is the reason it highlights the importance of being aware of what AI can do and cannot do. All the major journals globally kind of expect you to disclose the use of AI in the nature of work that you are undertaking. And there is, again, they do provide guidelines in terms of disclosing in what ways are you using generative AI. I mean, is it for summarizing literature? Is it for generating images or tables? Or is it solely for paraphrasing as well? So when you disclose that to a particular reviewer or narrator, they have an understanding to keep in mind while they are reviewing the manuscript, right? So if so, at this particular stage, that is where most of the scholars are even afraid. And but at the same time, there is always that fear, right? I mean, and if there are reviewers who might be angry that you have relied on a particular tool to summarize literature, and that anger could be solely based out of the fact that the tool missed citing their particular papers as compared to others, right? So that is still something which is, I think we are in that transition stage where while journals and even publishers are being open enough to accept the use of generative AI in their work, but the actual acceptance of the people who are reviewing it is still in that process where people need to be trained and being made aware of what is it that they can do. And it goes the other way around as well, right? I mean, even as authors, there have been multiple instances where the authors would blatantly just paste stuff generated from generative AI without even verifying it. I came across this fascinating article that was published a couple of months ago in Nature, where there was, I think it was in the field of biotechnology or mostly in like plant biology, where where someone had asked ChatGPT to create a review of a particular field. It went ahead and identified a paper that was written in the 90s where the paper had two columns as such, right? So it picked up two words from the first column and one word from the second column, which were completely disconnected to each other, and created a new field altogether of what it called as electron plant photoscopy or something, right? And then out of nowhere, people realized that there are more than 20 citations of this term altogether in the next 1 month. So that showed that people now actually are just using now because someone created that review and that term was generated, and now it is there as its training model. And for all the future scholars who are doing a search in the same field, they are getting that as a result as well. So that's why it becomes your work as well as a scholar to make sure to identify the pitfalls of what it can do. And that is another reason why reviewers are kind of scared as well. So it's kind of a game that has to be played carefully on both sides.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Sure.
Namesh, there's a question in the chat box.
Yes.
Thank you for the talk, Professor Namesh. My question is, indeed, an equilibrium has to be established between AI and humans. While doing research, we tend to run our topics through AI. It has been noted by me since time immemorial that if there is no proper data that signifies a correlation between two variables, just in the name of response, AI would come up with numbers that are not verifiable. What would your approach be to this problem? This is by Munasa Hussain.
Yeah.
Munasa, if you want to speak up, we can unmute you as well.
So, Manasa, as a response to your question, I think this is a perfect case of data hallucination, right? So, just because the tool was not able to actually find anything relevant, it starts generating stuff on its own. At this particular juncture, I mean, there are a couple of suggestions that I could give. One is rely on multiple tools like this and not just one, right? So, and you start identifying because each particular website or each particular tool has its own sets of training data, right? So it could be possible that there could be other websites or other AI tools that might pick up some paper which might not have been there in other paper. But even before that, it might be even relevant or useful to have an understanding of the journals that actually work that have published that kind of work, right? So if you and a quick Google search can do that as well. I mean, if you have understanding of few papers or few journals that have done a similar kind of work. I mean, in fact, there are AI tools as of now where if you put in a DOI of a particular paper, it actually shows you the list of the next 10 most relevant papers based on the source paper, right? So it is an iterative process where you would have to spend time searching for the relevant work. And if you really do not know the background of that particular field, it's very important. Sorry, it becomes very easy to just take that response of what is like of what comes the first time, right? So I think that would be my immediate response. I mean, you need to be aware of the field and the nature of work that is already happening there, and based on that itself, you would have an educated you would have an educated response of being able to critically review what exactly is being generated by the tool.
Yeah. I have a question, Namesh,
Yes,
before any more question comes up. Uh, this is from the part of an educator. Like we always make students, try to make students accountable for uh, using AI in a particular way, etc. Uh, how I see this is also because like where the student is coming is also from a space where our education has constantly encouraged a sort of perfection, like a
absolutely.
perfect literature review, a perfect academic language,
Mm.
a perfect way of research questions. So now, because there is an already existing system that only encouraged a sort of a perfect scholar, when a tool comes in, uh, it's quite natural that a learner goes to that to become that perfect person. So is it also time for us when we are reading stuff, when we are like evaluating stuff, also to look for that imperfections and like look for that original thinking if it has gone in, if it is really not put together well, also, you know. So isn't that an onus on the educator also?
Yeah, I don't even think I need to kind of say I don't even respond. I mean, you're absolutely bang on. I think the one of the biggest problems when we really look at academia or like even the way we design pedagogy as such is we tend to focus a lot on the outcome and not the process, right? And as a result of that, I mean, when I really think from a student's perspective, well, you have 6 to 7 courses that you are undertaking each semester where each particular course has around 5 to 6 assignments that you're submitting through the course of the semester. What that means is you have something or the other that you need to work on every week, right? And on top of that, you have multiple other engagements as well that you need to take care of. So, and when they know that when they know that as the instructor really cares about if you have submitted a given assignment by a given deadline, right? As long as it is there, they think that the work is done. And even for the instructor, there are multiple points to think. There are multiple avenues to think here as well. I mean, from an instructor's perspective, well, he or she has many things to take care of. And on top of all of those things, now he or she has to also grade 50 assignments every week. So all they have is a rubric to kind of look at, and based on that, you have a checklist and then you're done. So what that diminishes is like not looking at the understanding that the student has had over a particular concept. So one of the things that I have been very vocal about in my school and I've been trying to do is trying to rethink how we can teach research design as a process to students. At realizing that you cannot, irrespective of what your career trajectory is, be it in academia or working for a think tank or be it, I mean, unless and until you critically are not understanding the core objective of doing research, right? Or the processes that are involved in kind of looking at one thing at a time, there is no way you'll really understand the value of doing a literature review, for example, right? Or even understanding the importance of looking at theoretical perspectives while framing a research question. So I do completely agree with you that it's high time that we need to rethink how we are kind of designing our courses and not make it as outcome driven as possible, so that the core focus is on ensuring that the students really understand the core underpinnings of what is it that we're trying to teach.
Yeah. Preeti, you have your hands up, but there's one question in the chat box. Can we take that and then come to you? Uh, the question is, I use Gemini to simplify academic writing, a particular paragraph, since it was a mathematical analysis, and AI provided a table quite easy to understand. I'm confused. Should I use it in my research or I'll be flagged for plagiarism? Swapnil is asking this question.
So, Swapnil, the answer to that is you need to acknowledge the use of Gemini for doing it. And these are the kind of things that you should be using the AI tools for. I mean, instead of spending hours on Excel, figuring out how to clean your data or making sure that the units and the table is legible enough. I mean, you have this particular platform which cleans all of that for you and gives you in a format that is understandable. And that is, in my opinion, a perfect use of a tool. But what you need to do is make sure that as you are kind of listing out the table number or even acknowledgement, you duly mention that you're using that particular tool for this purpose. As long as you know the source of the information where you're coming it from, and if it's your own data, I do not think that is should be the cause for being flagged for plagiarism.
Yes, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Hi, Preeti.
Yeah. Hi, Preeti. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So it's actually not a question per se, but one of Navya's question made me think, and I have a bunch of thoughts. I'm just going to, say a lot of it. So one is the question about originality. So I was thinking about, how original were we before AI, right? So the thing is, the assumption that, all of us, especially in an academic context where we are expected to publish so much, the fact that originality is something that is coming alone in as we think in our little rooms, that was never the case. A lot of our conversations, like you were saying, is happening through conversations with other scholars, their ideas, and then something generating in us else. So that way, I think the use of AI in that way, right? That oh, what do you think about this idea that I have, and so on, and especially I want to go to the next point. Like I've definitely told my students that perhaps you should try using Notebook LM, because I don't want you to I don't want a chat GPT that hallucinates. Rather, that I want you to understand the text, because that I do think there is some merit in understanding classical literature, right? Like what are they saying? And sometimes our authors are very dense, and so
Of course.
to have Notebook LM put it down, and then to say, hey, how does this author think about this issue, and have two pieces even speak to each other, are actually very generative, in the sense that, yeah, there are things that I I hadn't thought about it, and maybe this helped me think about this. So I'm not sure if I'm outsourcing thinking there, but but in some sense, it gives me some ideas when I ask it, what does this author think about this issue, and so on. The other thing, though, is that I still think there is something human about it, especially when I think about data analysis, and I do qualitative data analysis, right? So there is something about things that will appear to you as you keep reading your data, right? As you still remain in it. I can't even explain why, I had this specific analysis at a specific time. I think your brain also has a theoretical framework, like you were saying, that you must have had certain, you must have read some things because of which you are already having a theoretical framework in your mind, and then you look through your data, then something emerges. It's not particularly original in that sense, but still there is a new understanding of your own data. Likewise, I think, I guess that's what it is. So there is, I because I think, as Shamindra was saying, AI also is learning on what is already present. We don't know whether it is able to bring in that, oh, this new idea that I just got, that by staying with my data itself. So I mean, yeah, so that's just what I wanted to say. And your thoughts on that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, when you were talking of Notebook LM, I have a colleague who's designed this very incredible assessment as a part of his course on philosophical foundations, actually. So what he does is he makes students to submit interaction engagement that they would do with the chat, like with ChatGPT or with Gemini, right, over a particular paper or over a particular field. And the idea is to kind of assess the nature of questions that are being framed, right, while interacting with the tool, and that is in the context of the paper itself. So here, when you know that, and what you're doing is, you know that for the tool, you are limiting the scope of the tool to like hallucinate or kind of generate information out of thin air. And what you're ensuring is that through this engagement, the student is actually asking critical questions to understand what is happening in a given field. I think this is the best possible application of how you can augment the use of these tools to understand a given setting. Right? And other than that, I think this is a phase where the idea of originality is something which is, I mean, it's still debated. Now that you say this, I mean, I think of the ways we did. I mean, not that we are old enough, but even like say 10 to 15 years ago, when we were doing our PhDs and we were doing most of our research, and all of that was primarily based off the ideas that would have come with brainstorming with our colleagues or with our faculty members, with our supervisors, and that itself becomes the source of how we kind of frame our argument. And now the way I look at it is basically a part of that is being taken care of by these AI tools. So you have the same kind of results coming, it's just that you have an additional stakeholder that you need to keep in mind of while undertaking your research.
And I've just reminded of the scope. Everything is a copy of a copy of a copy. But yeah, so I think we are perfect on time. And thank you so much, Namesh,
Of
for
course.
all of you here. We also want to flag right now, we have a link in the chat box that we have an MSc Development Practice Program. The admissions are currently going on, and we will have many of such conversations as part of the coursework, course curriculum as well. Let's also most engage with AI as part of the program as well. And this is just a beginning. Thank you so much, Namesh. And I
Of
think
course.
my greatest takeaway is, like you also wrote in your article, that AI is going to stay here. So let's start engaging with it. And yeah, I think there's no escape from engaging with AI and not being in our own bubbles of existence, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and we are perfectly on time. And thank you all for staying for so long, for 1 hour. And please write to us if you have to continue this conversation. You can write to Professor Namesh also. I'm sure that's email ID. You can get it from the website. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.